It's 7 a.m. You're standing in your kitchen, looking at a Zillow listing on your phone. The house isn't special. 3 bedrooms, a small patch of grass, a 30-minute commute. 2 years ago, the price was reasonable. Today, the number on the screen looks like a mistake. You refresh the page. Maybe it's a glitch. It isn't. You do the math in your head. You worked harder this year than ever before. You even got a raise. But the house is moving away from you faster than you can run toward it. It feels like someone changed the rules of the game while you were sleeping. You aren't crazy. And you aren't unlucky. You are simply standing at the wrong end of a waterfall. While you work for money, someone else is printing it. And by the time that new money reaches you, it's already dead. This is not a glitch. This is the engine of the modern world. This is the Cantillon Effect. Most people believe that inflation is like a gas. They think it fills the room evenly. If the government prints 10% more money, prices go up 10% for everyone. Simple. Fair. That is a lie. Money is not a gas. Money is a liquid. It flows like a river. And like any river, it touches some places first and other places last. This creates a critical delay, a lag in time. The people closest to the source of the new money get to spend it before prices rise. They buy assets, stocks, real estate, gold. They use the new money at its full purchasing power. But as that money moves through the system, it bids up prices. By the time it trickles down to your paycheck, the damage is done. The prices have already risen to absorb the new supply. You are holding the bag. You are effectively paying for their prosperity. This is why the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. It's not a conspiracy, it's mechanics. This mechanism was discovered 300 years ago by a man named Richard Cantillon. He was an Irish banker living in Paris, a ghost in the financial machine. He didn't just study the economy, he bet against it. He realized that money is just a claim on resources. If you double the money, you don't double the resources. You just dilute the claim. But the dilution isn't instant. It travels. Imagine a gold mine opens in a small village. The miners dig up the gold. They are rich. They have new money. They go to the tavern. They buy meat, wine, and new boots. The tavern owner hasn't raised his prices yet. He doesn't know there's more gold in circulation. The miners are extracting value from him at a discount. Now the tavern owner has the extra gold. He feels rich. He goes to the farmer to buy more meat. The farmer sees the demand and raises his prices. Slowly, the prices ripple outward. Who is the last person to touch the money? The person on a fixed income, the laborer. By the time the gold reaches them, a loaf of bread costs double. They didn't get any of the new gold, but they paid all of the inflation. Cantillon saw this in the 1720s. He watched his friend, John Law, try to save France with paper money. John Law was a gambler turned central banker. He believed money was just a tool to stimulate trade. He printed paper currency backed by the theoretical wealth of the Mississippi Company. The French aristocracy loved it. They were closest to the printer. They took loans in paper money, bought shares, and watched the numbers go up. It was a party, a hallucination of wealth. But Cantillon was watching the real economy, the price of bread, the price of land. He saw the discrepancy. The stock market was flying, but the streets were beginning to starve. He realized the paper was worthless. It was a claim on nothing. So what did he do? He didn't warn the public. He positioned himself. He shorted the currency. He borrowed the paper money and bought real things. He bought land. He bought heavy assets. He moved his wealth out of France. When the system collapsed, and it always collapses, the paper money returned to its intrinsic value, 0. The people holding the paper were liquidated. Their life savings were erased in weeks. Cantillon walked away with a fortune. He was called a visionary, but he was just a mechanic. He knew how the machine worked. Now, look at your phone again. Look at the headlines. Central bank balance sheet expands. Stimulus package approved. Quantitative easing. These are polite words for the same old trick. In 2020, trillions of dollars were created from thin air. Where did that money go first? It went to the bond market. It went to the banks. It went to the corporations with access to cheap credit. The CEOs used it to buy back their own stock. The investors used it to buy homes. The asset prices exploded. The rich who own assets saw their net worth double overnight. This is the K-shaped recovery. If you were on the top arm of the K, you own assets. You are swimming upstream. If you are on the bottom arm, you own labor. You are drowning downstream. By the time that money reached you, in the form of a $1,200 check or a small wage bump, it was too late. The cost of living had already sprinted ahead. This creates a psychological fracture in society. You feel it, the anger, the exhaustion. You are told that if you work hard, you will succeed. That is the social contract. But the Cantillon Effect breaks that contract. It decouples effort from reward. You see a 22-year-old day trader making your annual salary in an afternoon. You see corporations posting record profits while laying off staff. It feels like theft because it is theft. Inflation is a tax that is never voted on. It transfers purchasing power from the saver to the spender, from the worker to the owner. And the most insidious part? It forces you to take risks. In a sound money system, you can save your way to freedom. You put a gold coin under your mattress, and 50 years later, it still buys a suit of armor or a fine horse. Today, if you put cash under your mattress, it rots. You are forced to become an investor. You are forced to gamble in the stock market just to preserve what you earned. This pushes everyone out on the risk curve. It turns the entire economy into a casino. And who owns the house? The people printing the chips. So, how does this modern money injection actually work? The Federal Reserve doesn't just mail checks to everyone. Instead, they buy bonds from what are called primary dealers, which are really just the big banks. The Fed essentially presses a button, creating new digital credits out of thin air, and swaps those credits for the bank's bonds. Now these banks are flush with fresh cash reserves. What do they do with it? They lend it out. But they're not lending it to you for your small business idea. That's seen as too risky. No, they lend it to hedge funds. They lend it to corporate giants like Apple and Amazon. And what do these entities do with all this cheap debt? They use it to buy assets. This is why the price of the S&P 500 goes up. It's why luxury condos in Manhattan become more expensive. This kicks in something called the wealth effect. The rich feel richer. They buy a third car. They renovate their kitchen. Eventually, that demand for contractors and materials slowly trickles down. Finally, that contractor might hire you, paying you with the money that was originally created maybe 3 years ago. But here's the problem. By the time that money reaches you, lumber costs more, gas costs more, your rent costs more. You are catching the water at the bottom of the waterfall, where it's turbulent and muddy. The clear, clean water was already drunk at the top of the mountain. History shows us time and again that this kind of structure is fundamentally unstable. When the gap between the asset holders and the wage earners becomes too wide, things break. Think about the Roman Empire. They debased their currency, the denarius, to pay the military. The soldiers got the fresh new coins first. The citizens got the inflation. The result? The collapse of trade. People stopped accepting the currency altogether. They went back to bartering, back to localism. The empire fractured. Or look at Weimar Germany, where the printing press ran hot. The people who held German bonds were completely wiped out. But the industrialists, the ones who owned the factories and the machines, they survived. A German industrialist named Hugo Stinnes borrowed massive amounts of marks to buy up mines and shipping lines. He then paid back those loans with worthless, inflated paper money. He became known as the king of inflation because he understood the game. He knew that debt is a short position on the currency. If you know the money is dying, you borrow as much as you can to buy things that cannot die. But let's be clear, this is dangerous advice for the average person. You can't borrow like a billionaire. The bank won't give you those kinds of terms. So, what is the survival strategy for the 21st century? How do you protect yourself from the Cantillon effect? You have to change your very definition of savings. Stop saving in the currency that is being systematically diluted. If you're holding cash, you are the exit liquidity for the entire system. You need to move closer to the source of truth, if not the source of money. You need assets that are scarce, things like real estate, gold, commodities, or even digital assets with a fixed supply. Now listen to this part carefully. These things are not actually going up in value. Your house is not worth more. A house is still just a pile of bricks and wood. It provides the exact same shelter it did 10 years ago. It hasn't changed. The ruler you're using to measure it has shrunk. The dollar has gotten smaller, so it takes more of them to buy the same house. Once you truly understand this, the world looks completely different. You realize that price is a lie, but value is the truth. You stop chasing higher wages in a dying currency and start chasing equity and ownership. You stop asking, how much does this cost? And you start asking, how much of my time did it take me to earn this? The Cantillon Effect is, at its heart, a transfer of time. When they print money, they are literally stealing hours from your future. They are taking the energy you expended at work and dissipating it into thin air. The only defense is to store your energy, your value, in a battery that doesn't leak. This is why the wealthy love art, vintage cars, and land. It's not just because they enjoy them, it's because they can't be printed. The great philosopher Al-Ghazali said that money is like a mirror. It has no color of its own, it just reflects the value of what it buys. When the mirror is broken, the reflection is distorted. Right now, we are living in a hall of broken mirrors. The signals are jammed, the prices are wrong. But you don't have to be a victim of this distortion. You have to step out of the river. Look at your own portfolio. How much of it is in claims on currency, things like bonds, savings accounts, or annuities, and how much of it is in ownership of reality? The system is designed to reward the borrower and punish the saver. It's backward, it feels immoral, but it is the reality we live in. You cannot change the Federal Reserve. You cannot stop the printer, but you can build an ark. You have to understand counterparty risk. If your wealth depends on a promise from a government to pay you back, you are trusting a debtor who also owns the printing press. Mathematically, that is a bet you will eventually lose. The Cantillon Effect is like the gravity of finance. It pulls everything toward the center of power. If you stand on the perimeter, you get crushed. But if you move toward the center, by owning the same kinds of things the powerful own, you survive. This requires education. It requires overcoming the fear of volatility. Cash feels safe because the number in your account doesn't change, but its value is evaporating silently, like the boiling frog. Assets feel risky because their price jumps around. But over the long arc of history, they preserve the energy you put into them. The choice is yours. You can stay downstream, waiting for the water to reach you, just hoping it's still clean. Or you can start hiking upstream. It's a harder path. It requires study and discipline, but the view from the top is the only place where the water is truly clear. The system isn't broken. It's working exactly as it was designed. The question isn't how to fix it. The question is, where are you standing? Do you really think this wealth gap is sustainable, or are we approaching a breaking point? Just look at the prices in your local store. Then look at the assets held by the central banks. Compare the two. The math doesn't lie. We are in the late stages of a long-term cycle. History is rhyming. The Cantillon Effect is in overdrive. Don't be the last one to figure this out. If you want to understand what's coming and how to prepare for it, hit that subscribe button. History leaves a fortune behind for those who pay attention, and I'll help you claim it.